Alright, so I'm going to do a quick Tomcast about character creators. I'm pretty sure most people have seen this in games where they include a character creator and then like players always just like on the stream or whatever, they just like create some sort of like monster looking character sort of as a joke. And I mean, I'm going to talk about character creators in maybe a little bit more serious manner, but I think really for those players, they're just trying to, have fun, not really taking the game seriously. And it is kind of one of those moments of like, congratulations, you broke the game. Like, you decided to do something weird and you got a weird result. And, in some ways that's okay because it's, just people making their own fun. I think we probably see a little more of that than we really should or we really believe people are doing, just because people do it for attention. But when it really comes down to like what I think a character creator is doing for most players, is it kind of creates this like weird scenario where you want to give the player a bunch of expression, then you just end up letting them create characters that don't visually fit in with the world. I think probably some of the most obvious cases of this is like if you make a character that has like a horribly scarred face, you would expect other characters to react to that, or at least maybe make mention of it or something. I think probably the like biggest example of this when characters can have like really intense like face paint or like tattoos or something. Okay, like that might be a part of this world, but does that have like a special meaning to it? Is there a reason for that to exist? And even when you look at like their inclusion in games, you look back into the real world and you see, facial tattooing or face paint or something like that. They have some sort of, meaning or like they're a rite of passage or they mark some sort of event. So it's kind of strange that you now just have these characters that either have a facial tattoo and nobody else does, or they do have a facial tattoo and other characters do, but there's just no mention of like what that means in the world. It's kind of one of those situations too where I'm sitting down and I'm like, you're allowing the character to sort of look weird, and then you just make like absolutely no mention of it, and it just creates a weird dissonance in the whole game experience. And most character creation choices just do not matter at all. I started playing Avowed right now, and they're kind of interesting because they allow you to choose like a bunch of stuff about your character, but you're kind of forced to be playing a godlike, and a godlike in their game means that you have a weird face. And I mean, I wish I could give you like more information about it, but like that's the most like obvious thing. The game kind of has everybody noticing it, and like I understand that there's a bit of the experience would get really annoying if everyone was saying, "Oh God, what's on your face?" or like, "What's up with your face?" all the time. But that's like also being part of a godlike, a be part of this character would be that experience. I know that would be annoying, but it's the and I would also say like you shouldn't be making annoying things for characters. It's also this question of like you didn't have to choose to make them a godlike to begin with, so they clearly wanted to do this. And I am excusing like development realities. I know like the project wasn't like as straightforward as it could have been. But why do you even have a character creator if you're going to limit my choices and expression to a certain way? And especially here, it's kind of specifically narrow. Why am I allowed to have these choices if I'm going to have a weird face anyway? And why not just give me like a few presets and let me be done with it, and then not spend all the time to build this crazy character creation system unless you like already have one for some reason. But whatever. And like honestly, it might just be that I'm annoyed that like I have to play like this singular race and I can't play like a dwarf or like a Muppet or whatever. They have these like Muppet characters in their game. I forgot what they're actually called, but they look like Muppets, so I just call them Muppets. Like back to the character creators and stuff, like the lowest hanging fruit for them to do is like they already have all this data about what my character looks like, but it's like I picked it in the character creator, man. It's like obviously it's there. They could have a physical description of my character, even if it was like relatively brief, right? Especially in Avowed, they don't give you that many choices of eye color. They don't give you that many choices of hair color. And you could at least say like, hey, there's a person with long or short, light or dark hair. They have this colored eyes. They have this kind of complexion. You could create a description, like a physical description of this character. If you're going to include a character creator, I'm making choices as a player about my character, and whenever I'm making choices, I want those choices to matter or for there to be a callback. It's kind of like this thing. I think that people just want feedback and they want to be noticed that their choices kind of make sense. Coming back to the fact that like then you just make characters that don't fit in with the world. I think the most egregious part of that is just like the paint and facial tattoos and stuff. Because it's if you're going to do that, you at least have to be consistent with it. And you just start like kind of thinking about why people would paint their faces and like what that means. If you're not going to do it, then just don't put it in, right? To me, there's this element of every choice to add something to a game like that creates work. Be really aware of that and don't just do stuff because other people do it. Instead of taking the time to do stuff that other people do, take time to do the stuff that's important and then put more meaning behind it. So in that vein, I was thinking about the face paint and tattoos, and I was thinking like face paint wise, I feel like you could actually get in there and be like, hey, we could make some like real choices about what this means and what this shows about a character. And I mean, in some ways, like you could just make the argument that like women in modern society or whatever, they typically already wear makeup. So it's like not that weird for someone to be putting something on, painting something on their face. I was thinking like if you were to sort of expand this to all of society, it would at some level a sign of status. And maybe like having brighter and more expensive colors, or more complicated designs would denote having a high status. Furthermore, like if you have very crisp and symmetrical designs, that implies that you're spending a lot of attention to detail, and so you like have the time in the morning to be that put together and to do that kind of stuff. Taken to the extreme, if you had like queens and princesses and stuff like that, they could have like insanely complex and intricate designs. Noblemen might also be doing that, but I feel like basing noble male culture off of contemporary male culture, there would probably be this push to not seem like fussy about it. So you would still want to do it well, but you wouldn't want to do it too much. And there would obviously be like a kind of like a back and forth on that. Like, did I overdo it? Was this the right thing for this sort of affair? Kind of whatever. Yeah, and like having too many designs or like overdoing the design might be seen as like overdressing, or dressing in a way that's particularly attention grabbing, which might be kind of strange. If you were sloppy or asymmetrical, it would, in like the facial paint you put on, it would be kind of like saying like either I don't have a lot of time or I don't really care, but I just want to have it sort of done. And in some ways, if you weren't wearing anything, that would either be a very deliberate statement, maybe for like religious reasons or something, but it might also just be like, I'm just unprepared today. It's like having your hair unkept. And when you think of people that have unkept hair when they go out, it's more like they weren't expecting to be out, or like they're homeless or something, and they just have no ability to keep themselves kept together, by circumstance or whatever. You can also sort of expand this too. Like I was talking mostly about like men and women here, but when it comes to youth cultures, they're going to be doing stuff with their face paint to annoy their parents. Like that's not even a question. That's just a given. You could think of like, well, what are all the like basic rules? Well, they'd probably violate them like strategically or like do particular things to kind of make it obvious or something. Then furthermore, different regions, would use different pigments because that's what was common there. They may use different designs more often than others. Just to like fully bring this back into like game design stuff. These sorts of things, even if they weren't that intrusive, it could just be really a great way to help players identify NPCs. Like they could just be like, oh yeah, you need to find this person. They have this hair color, these color eyes, and like their face paint is like blue triangles or something. And so they just have to find so obviously the first thing they're going to look for is like blue triangles, but like, they can easily spot, these kind of characters. Anyway, what I was trying to get at is that like, I just think that if you're going to be including choices in a character creator, you really want to understand what you're doing and to try to make sure like the choices matter and that it all kind of fits in the world and that you're kind of still letting the world be sort of cohesive. And I mean, you give players expression within those bounds, but you just don't, let them overdo it. Or, you let them make a monster if they want to. You can't stop them, but you try to not make it easy for them to make a choice that turns out not to matter at all. I guess in some ways, it's about doing this for the players that care about it, not so much for the players that don't. I guess, what I'm really trying to say is I just really hope their choice for making the main character of Avowed like a freaky looking godlike wasn't because they saw a bunch of streamers making like monstrous faces and character creators and they were just like, oh yeah, we gotta lean in on that. Like that would just be profoundly stupid. And I don't think they did that. Or at least I hope.